The full chest is one of the most important measurements. Because it is a girth measurement, think of the tape cutting the chest right in half at the nipple. We'll look at this from a few different angles. Make sure the tape is parallel to the ground in front and back of the client. It is helpful to hold the two ends of the tape in one hand while using the other to adjust in the back. This allows you to make sure the tape is even. Again, make sure the tape is snug but has enough slack to gently slide left and right. Read the tape at eye level. Front chest. The front chest is for posture reference. Measure the width of the chest from armpit to armpit. Don't dig into the armpit, but start at the point where the arm meets the chest. Again, measure at or just above the nipples. Back measurement. Measure the width of the back from armpit to armpit across the shoulder blades. Don't dig into the armpit, but start at the point where the arm meets the back. Read tape at eye level. Stomach or jacket waist measurement. With the tape ends in one hand, measure the circumference of the abdomen about 1 inch above the belly button. Make sure the tape is parallel to the ground across the front and back of the client. Make sure the tape is snug enough but allows for some movement. The seat measurement is critical not just for suit jackets but for shirts and pants as well. Measure the circumference of the seat at the widest portion of the hip and buttocks area. As always, make sure the tape is parallel to the ground across the front, side, and back of the client. We'll look at this from a few different angles. Find the meatiest part of the buttocks. This frequently, but not always, corresponds to where the pelvic and femur joints meet. The shoulder measurement is critical because of its bearing on the arm length and then the difficulty of altering. Measure across the top of the shoulders, starting and stopping just outside the edge of the client's acromion bones. Make sure that the middle of the tape lands on the protruding spine bone on the back of the neck. For example, a 20-inch shoulder should read 10 in the middle of the spine bone. Sleeve length. Start at the edge of the acromion bone on the shoulder, stopping at the outside edge of the elbow and ending 1 inch past where the wrist bends. It is essential that you start at the exact spot where you ended with the shoulder measurement, at the end of the acromion bone. Jacket length. Start on top of the shoulder at the intersection of the shoulder and neck. This is the high point of the trapezius muscle. Measure straight down to where the fingers come out from the palm. This is typically at the bottom of the client's crotch. Make sure that the client is looking straight forward. A downward facing head can alter the measurement. Armhole. Have the client lift his or her dominant arm. Start at the top of the shoulder and loop around under the armpit, again connecting at the top of the shoulder. Then have the client relax his arm down to his side. The tape shouldn't be too tight or too loose, but snug in his armpit when his arms are at his side. Bicep. Measure the circumference of the bicep at the largest point. This is typically at the same height as the client's nipple. Forearm. Measure the circumference of the forearm at the largest point. This point is not the elbow bone, but just below. It is where the forearm muscle is the biggest. Wrist. Measure the circumference of the wrist at the largest point. This is typically over the wrist knuckle. If a client is wearing a watch, do not measure over the watch, but add notes to the section later. Neck. Measure the circumference of the neck just below the Adam's apple. Usually, a client will know this measurement as it corresponds to the shirt sizes they purchase off the rack. You might have the client move his head around or put a finger between the tape and the body to make sure it feels comfortable. Front vest. Starting at the same point as the jacket or shirt length, at the base of the neck and top of the trapezius muscle. Measure straight down with the client looking forward and measure to the bottom of his waistline. Back vest. Starting at the same point from the front vest measurement. Measure down the back in a straight line until the bottom of the waistline. Waist. Ask the client where he wants to wear his suit pants on his waist and have him pull his pants to that exact height. Measure the circumference of the waist at that point, using the waistline as a guide. Make sure the tape does not hike up too high on the client's back. You should have the client remove his belt and measure around the pants he is wearing. But be sure to pull it tight so that if you do, the bulkiness of the pants don't make his measurement bigger than it should be. This measurement should be his true waist size. Crotch. Begin at the top of the waistband in the front of the client and measure down under the crotch, coming up to the top of the waistband in the back. Make sure that the client has his pants situated on his waist where he wants to wear his suit pants. Ask the client if he is comfortable with how tight or loose you have pulled the tape. Outseam. Starting at the top of the waistband, measure the length of the pants. For a full break, and if the client is not wearing shoes, measure to the floor. If he is wearing shoes, measure to the top of the soles of his shoes, which is the same place as the floor if he were not wearing shoes. For a slight break or no break, measure the same distance but subtract anywhere from 0.5 to 1.25 inches depending on the fit preference of the client. Thigh. Measure the circumference of the thigh just an inch or two below the client's crotch. This should be at the medius section of the thigh. Make sure the tape is parallel to the ground, front and back of the client. Knee measurement. Measure the circumference of the knee right over the kneecap or patella bone. Make sure the tape is parallel to the ground in front and back of the client.